as we roll down this unfamiliar road. And although this wave is stringing us along, just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
You guys know you're not alone. This is 94.3 FM, The Talk of Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, Independent Gazette. We have a lot going on. Last week, Michael, we talked about Bruce Levine and certainly the custody for cash. I would be remiss if I did not mention that we've been overwhelmed with individuals from around the country speaking up on this issue. The intimidation, the gag orders. Frankly, I'm shocked. Michael, I am absolutely shocked with the stories I've heard. And certainly people like Bruce Levine and others have been on the front line. I had the pleasure of meeting individual Thursday also, just before we went down and did the TV show in Allentown. But we had talked previously, and I just want to put this out there. As a lawyer, and this comes off his website, as a lawyer, I have represented whistleblowers, police officers, public servants, women, minorities, and other common people in all walks of life. I've worked with people struggling. I have seen and felt the pain and frustration of people who have been disenfranchised by our government. This is from his website. Welcome, Andy Ostrowski.
Hey, thanks very much, Lou. Thanks for having me this morning. Those words sounded pretty good, didn't they?
What's that?
I said those words sounded pretty good, didn't they? And then they're all true. That's part of the problem.
Absolutely. And you've been on the front lines, and certainly, we've interviewed individuals here. Kids for Cash debuted here in Wilkes-Barre this week. I interviewed Robert May, and we're going to get into that probably in a future edition here. Certainly, I did some interviews yesterday, unbelievable, up at the Cinemark, Montage Mountain, where Kids for Cash, people that were involved with the Kids for Cash, but more so even with this Custody for Cash, as we have now labeled it. And I got to tell you, Andy, the things that I've heard is it's scary. In fact, one of the, and I have to bring this up to you, and then I'll see what you have to say about this. Not only are these individuals scared, I can't wait to put some of these up, because if this doesn't tug on people's heartstrings, where women have had to decide, with giving up their children or not seeing them again. I mean, it is really, really scary. And I have to be very careful of how I say these things, because I don't want to reveal people, because the intimidation factor that can come out of this. But I talked to a woman 30 years as a psychotherapist, and on an issue that I had spoke to her about. She said the most egregious case that she has ever been on, and she's went to the Corbett administration, and she's went to the Attorney General's office and Human Services, and what she got back was, you open your mouth, you talk, you're fired, and I want you to talk about that a bit.
Well, yeah. Let me first say, Lou, that. Thank you very much, and God bless you for the work that you're doing. One of the biggest problems and one of the reasons these things occur is because we don't have an independent media looking at these issues. You go to a mainstream media and you try to talk about court issues, and you try to talk about court corruption, and you try to talk about what really goes on, and you get no coverage at all, and you get ostracized and alienated. And for several years, as I've been working on these issues, I've been really focused on trying to get some media involvement in this. And I've kind of started my own media blog called the Pennsylvania Civil Rights Law Network. And I've really been trying to focus on these things from the inside, because one of the problems is the people just don't understand what happens within the courts and what happens with lawyers and how much it's controlled from the inside. And the essence of that is really what happened in the whole Kids for Cash scandal. Those judges, Carnahan and Silverella, they properly were prosecuted and properly incarcerated, and there's been a lot of publicity about those issues, but it never needed to get that point. And if we did not have an intimidated lawyer class, which is really what it is, the lawyers are an oppressed and intimidated class that do not have the same First Amendment rights as most other people do. And, the problem in the Kids for Cash issue fundamentally was a bar association and court problem. Lawyers knew for years what was going on up there. And some lawyers, secretly, put information out to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Central Pennsylvania, and they could have at any time for a number of years investigated what was going on there. But because it's all about just protecting your people, it's just the good old boys network run rampant. This is just people wanting to take care of their friends, and with a wink and a nod, look past these issues and just hope and pretend they go away because they feel that they're in some kind of superior position with respect to how the people react, and that they can control information, and that they can, basically protect their whole system. And that's fundamentally what happened with the Kids for Cash scandal, and it's absolutely tragic. It's the same thing. You've got another Central Pennsylvania issue. You got what happened at Penn State with Jerry Sandusky. If I can transition between the two of them, because they are, the core of the problem is the same with both of them. The lawyers at Penn State University were the problem with that case. The lawyers in Tom Corbett were the problem with that case. They all had information. I personally had represented people at Penn State University for, a decade or more. And in these lawsuits I was bringing, I started saying, the problem that we have here is it's the problem with the administration. These people control information. They control lies, they spread lies, and their lawyers protect them and cover them up, and they're connected into the federal courts. So in all honesty, for 10, 12 years, I was out here, screaming, not screaming, yelling, that's not the way I do things, but I was out here talking and pressing issues about systematic, dishonesty and corruption that leads to these problems. And look at, in both situations, both of these tragic situations, look at all the children's lives that have been ruined as a result. And lawyers and judges and courts are the core problem to all of it. And it's just absolutely tragic.
The story that we wrote on Custody for Cash, and I'm starting to believe that this is going to dwarf what has happened with Kids for Cash. And when we first wrote it, obviously we got a lot of accolades from people that have had to go through this system. But certainly the establishment, why you're writing about stuff like this intimidation factor. And I'm going to have this lady on next week. She's from Colorado, and she was faced with and eventually given a gag order, Andy, and saying, if you speak out, we're taking your kids. And I don't think people realize that this is going on, and that's exactly what happened. She started coming to the end of her case. And she says, I have to go speak. And she actually went on CNN, and she has spoken before Congress. And she's agreed to come on the radio show next week. But she comes back to court, and right away they arrested her. They threw her in jail.
Andy, this is X on the line. Hey, my question for you is, what is one thing you can tell us that you think the public, above all else, of all the other facts what's the one thing that we need to understand specifically about this?
Well, that's a good question. It's not one I was directly ready to prepare for, but, what you need to understand is that when you hire lawyers to represent you, and, this is coming from somebody who, has had a long experience of representing people in court and believed in what I was doing and, was committed, and I honored my profession and I honored the courts and I respect the system. But what I've learned over time is that when you have a lawyer, in many, many ways, you're compromising your rights. They'll let you go in and file, personal injury lawsuits, and you'll get $1 million recoveries from, slip and fall accidents and spilling hot coffee on yourself and things of that nature. But wait till you have a case where you got to talk about some sensitive issues. Wait till you have a whistleblower case against the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or a discrimination case against, Penn State University. And, you go in there and you try to talk about issues that strike at the core of what this system is all about.
So Andy, what you're really saying is the fact that whatever you do in the court system, don't ever, ever, ever come up against the establishment of the powers that be running things. Don't ever go up against the system. That's where the thing is. Go against everything else. You can sue your neighbor, you can sue a company, but when it comes to going after a corrupt government, then suddenly the walls come up.
Right, and corrupt government and their crony private entities. I'm here in Central Pennsylvania, and I've had big cases against Hershey Foods and Penn State and these stalwart Central Pennsylvania institutions. And they, because of the connectedness of their lawyers to the political system, it's the same thing as going against the government. But yeah, you're really at the core of it. And the problem, there's some institutional problems with it. It's some Pennsylvania constitutional issues. There's an issue under Article 5, Section 10C of the Pennsylvania Constitution that gives the courts, exclusive power and authority over everything that goes on in courts, including the discipline of lawyers. So, there are times in cases, if you're going to zealously advocate for a client, you have to suggest to a judge that they are engaging in misconduct or improper behavior. That's an awfully difficult thing to do for a lawyer. And I'm not trying to bash lawyers. There are many, many honorable, decent, kind, and caring lawyers out there. But it's just a reality of the human condition that when you're standing in front of a lawyer and you have one client next to you who needs you to say some difficult things, and you've got 25 other clients who are dependent on you, and you've got a wife and kids at home who are dependent on an income, it's a very difficult thing to stand there and go in the face of all that just in one case, in one instance. So a lot of lawyers, and it's a process. The term that I like to use is acculturation, and that's a term that came up in connection with the Custody4Cash scandal. The Luzerne, the Pennsylvania Judicial Justice Commission. I'm not sure if I have the exact title of what that group was called, but they did a study on the breakdowns in the Custody4Cash scandal, and they talked about the disciplinary issues of lawyers, and they wanted to talk to the Luzerne County Bar Association about what happened. The Luzerne County Bar Association refused to participate in that issue. And the reason is, and, I don't have, I know generally what's going on, but the reason is because they knew darn well that if they started investigating the Bar Association, they would have found that lawyers knew what was going on in there and I can't imagine sitting in a courtroom. This is me personally talking. If I was a lawyer and I was sitting in a courtroom and I saw children coming before judges without lawyers and getting sent off to placement institutions for, minor childlike, offenses, I don't know that I could have sat there and sat still and not said anything. But that's what happened. There were lawyers in those courtrooms watching what was going on when that stuff was happening. So, there's a process of acculturation that goes on in the practice of law. And it starts when you're in law school. You buy into it and you believe, and I'm one of them. The unlearning of this stuff for me has been a very personally troubling experience because I believed. I believed everything that they taught me about the system, that we have, the greatest, most fairest system of justice in the world. And it used to offend me. I could always laugh at a lawyer joke. I'm not that uptight about those kind of things. But it used to offend me, to come across the people who would say that all lawyers are bad and they would criticize the system. And, you take that stuff personally, and I took it personally. But the fact is that that's what happened, and I was as acculturated, and for lack of a better term, brainwashed about some of this stuff as anybody else. So when you get, back to your question, the core of the problem here is that lawyers simply aren't free to talk about, some of these issues. And if I can transition just to comment on what Lou said about your Custody4Cash, I don't know how much you're aware of it, but there was a recent film, a fellow by the name of Joe Sorges from California. He was a father who had gone through a divorce and had experienced some of this stuff himself. And he fortunately for him, he had some money, and he just put out a movie called Divorce Corp that was just released nationwide. And some of the people, I didn't get the chance to go see it, but I talked to Joe Sorge and admired his effort, and the people that have seen it. I know a lot of people that have been going through this domestic relations business, and it's just absolutely awful what goes on. But you might want to look at that film called Divorce Corp. and try to reach out to Joe Sorge. I have some contact information for you that I can get that to you.
Andy, before we go to break, I just want to bring up two quick things, and then we're going to take our break, and you have some more announcements that we're going to talk about. But I want what we can do and what can change. I know you believe that perhaps maybe we need to start putting these video cameras in these lawyers in their chambers. And once again, it doesn't have to be to reveal maybe people's personal stuff going on, but we could look at it as being a black box. If just as is in an airplane with a mechanical malfunction, maybe a judicial malfunction. I also started making some phone calls to our local representatives last night, especially after I got that phone call, Andy, from that psychotherapist who's really been threatened, and we have to put something on the laws where if anybody threatens whistleblowers, and I know there's probably laws out there, but we have to do something. I have to say that I did get a response really late last night after 9:00 from Haggerty's office here, and he says, as an elected reform legislator from the 112th, I appreciate all employees who witness wrongdoing to come forward. It's imperative that employees are protected. We will be sitting down with him and other elected officials during this week and start maybe putting something in place. Andy, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about a few of the other things that you have to say and certainly the meaning of consent of the governed.
So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself and I didn't know I was lost.
We're waking you up, 94.3 FM, the talk of this is Sanity Check. Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, 888-577-4487. I want to play a quick a clip here. Andy, I took this off your website. We, the people, need to take back the power and restore the true meaning of the consent of the government. Let's hear what a few people had to say about that.
That all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is probably the most famous phrase in the English language. But the words that immediately follow may be the most important. Here's what it says. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
And let's see what Ronald Reagan has to say about the consent of the governed.
And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed.
I took this off your website, Andy. I believe in the moral virtue of free enterprise and hard work. I believe in the rights of labor as our most valuable form of capital. That is fantastic. I believe that corporatism, cronyism, Wall Street influence, lawyers and courts are the most root causes of our political ills. People have no faith anymore in the integrity of our government institutions, and they work for us, and that trust needs to be restored. That will be the focus of what I'm doing. You go on, our political struggle is not a Democrat problem, a Republican problem, neither a liberal problem nor a conservative problem. It is an American problem. Our system is broken. I have worked with and represented Democrats, Republican, Tea Partyers, Libertarians, Occupy Wall Street. The theme of this is all the same. Our government no longer works for us. It works only for the privileged and the moneyed few. I will work with integrity and honesty. I will be beholden to no one but my constituents. I will fight to make us truly proud when we salute our flag and utter the words, God bless America. And it goes on, Andy Ostrowski for Congress. Andy, you have thrown your hat in the ring. You're running for Congress right here in Luzerne County, right here in the 11th Congressional District. Speak to us. Let us know a little bit more. I certainly encouraging for what I've read so far.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you read that. Thank you very much, and thank you for highlighting that for me. And yes, that's the intention that I've announced. I'm running for the 11th congressional seat as a Democrat against the incumbent Lou Barletta, who's held that term for for 2 terms, held that seat for 2 terms in this extreme gerrymandered district that goes from southern Cumberland County, all the way down to Shippensburg, cuts a swath right up through central Pennsylvania, wraps around and captures Hazleton, cuts out Wilkes-Barre, but goes the whole way up to the northern end of Wyoming County. That's the district. And yeah, honestly, Lou, these are they're in my view, there are still political solutions on the table. People are upset. People are awfully upset. And I have worked. I've worked and studied a lot about this whole sovereign rights movement that's going on lately. And I am very, very sympathetic to those issues. I think that a lot of them have a lot of merit. But there's an undertone to all these issues, and with all due respect, it's even some of what I've sensed from this libertarian wing, this libertarian movement lately. Again, I'm all behind everybody pursuing whatever their heart's desires are politically. But I think what is driving these things and what is causing the increase in all of their popularity is people just want to check out from this corrupt government that we're dealing with. Right. I mean, and it goes back to, honestly, even though it was vilified and put down and ridiculed, you go back to that Occupy Wall Street movement, giving $700 billion to bail out bankers while they're taking millions of Americans' homes who are doing nothing but trying to live the American dream, or out working hard, working 2 jobs, wife, and they're taking time away from their families to work so they can pay these mortgages. No wonder people were upset about something like that. And honestly, when you get right down to it, that's the core of the consent of the government issue. That was the political class making a political solution to protect the institutions that caused the problems to begin with, and totally discounted all the suffering people out there who wanted a say in this thing. And that's what I mean about the consent of the governed. People are checking out on this system because the system no longer works for us. And I think that if we had a government that we could trust, a lot more people would have a lot more faith in standing behind their legislators, standing behind their congressmen and senators, and trusting that somebody was going to be a voice for them. And maybe I'm because I am not a career politician. This is you're a citizen politician. Yep. I'm a citizen politician, and I believe that even these court issues, we need political solutions to these things. I believe I have an experience that not many people have, and I've got the courage. You look at my record. I've got the courage to say things that a lot of people won't say. It gets you in trouble and doesn't make you many friends, but I was never about making friends. I was about trying to protect people's constitutional rights, and that's what motivates me, and that's what I'm doing. As always with this show, we're winding down, and certainly I did want to touch on the banksters real quick, but we did bring up the fact that many people don't know how even our debt comes about. We had talked about auditing the Fed and all those things, and those are issues that we're going to talk about. Andy, we are going to have you back on the show in a future date and learn more about you and specifically about some of the issues. How can people get a hold of you? AndyOstrowski.com is the website, and my email, I'll give you my personal email, is Andy@AndyOstrowski.com. And I need, I got to get people on the ground helping me circulate nominating petitions, and I don't have a political organization in place. So anybody, February 18th to March 11th, I got to get signatures to get on the ballot. Anybody out there who wants to help, just get in touch with me, and they'll be able to get in touch with us right here at the Independent Gazette, Sanity Check Radio. Okay. Andy, thanks for joining us. Michael, I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure talking with Andy. Certainly, some of the stuff that he's bringing up and is refreshing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Lou, it is, and what I'm hoping is that if individuals like Andy get in, that they really do stay independent from the party that they belong to. Because this is a big issue that I see with a lot of the folks. And I have to say with Mr. Barletta, the promises to the Tea Party was to do Tea Party's work, and yet he's down there doing the establishment party. So this is the fear that I have for all politicians.
Michael, you know what that music means. You know where we're at, my friend. You got the last word.
Hey, God bless all.
God bless everybody. See you next week.